Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Rocio Ruiz, the host and producer of Out in the Real World podcast. My hope is that if you're going through a major change in your life and are experiencing feelings of uncertainty, that you will find comfort and support through this podcast. Out in the real world. Out in the real world. I'm very excited because today's guest is Evan Panzer. Uh, Honestly, he's pretty cool. If you heard the intro music to this podcast, he created that. So, Evan, tell us a little bit about that. How was it creating the theme music?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. This is so exciting. Um, yeah, creating the theme song was awesome. I mean, as soon as you told me about this podcast and we talked a little bit about it, I was really excited about that phrase out in the real world. And I know you remember that as soon as you told me, I was like, cool, I'll make a jingle for it. I feel like I do that a lot. I hear a phrase and I kind of hear it musically. So within a little bit of time had found a guitar part and put some vocals to it. And yeah, I tried to make it sound a little foresty, put a little rain sounds behind it. I spent a few minutes recording some animal sounds so you can hear those in the background a little bit, which are pretty bad animal sounds. I had to look up what sound a monkey made because I could not figure out how to imitate a monkey. But there's some little animals in the back there. They're pretty quiet, but if you listen really close, you can hear some kind of foresty out in the real world sounds.
So, Evan thought that the podcast was actually called Out in the Wild. so, but that would make sense because that's what it feels like. I feel like when you're just thrown out into
Yeah.
society and you
Yeah.
have to figure out what it means to be an adult. So,
Mhm.
that's a little bit of a background. So now every time you hear that catchy song and it's stuck in your head, because it was stuck in my head, just remember that, he created it. By the way, Evan, if you need me to collab with you or something, I'd love to sing along to that song.
Amazing. We'll get you on the theme song for season 2.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. No, but let me tell you guys a genuine background of Evan. So Evan graduated in May of 2022 from SUNY Geneseo, and he has a BA for music vocal performance. So how Evan and I met, we both went to the same university, and I've seen him a couple of times around. He was very involved on campus. And again, like this podcast, we do discuss a lot about figuring life after graduation. And I think Evan and I relate in the sense of the majors that we have are more in the creative field. It's more like you have to really go out there. There's no set path for it. It's more of connections and the constant hard work to put your name out there in whether it's in the journalism field or whether it's through casting. So that's a little bit of a background of Evan, but tell us about you. What have you been up to ever since you graduated?
So I took a year after graduation and hung around Geneseo. Really, I was calling it a gap year in the sense that I was going to go into a grad program, but I always felt like some part of me, I really love education, but also I really value my own freedom and having space for myself. And it started to feel like grad school, I wasn't fully convinced that that was where I wanted to go next. So I took that year and I worked in Geneseo, both as a chef in a Polish restaurant called Euro Cafe, and also for the Hillel as the director of Jewish student life. And both of those jobs were really fulfilling in a lot of ways and really inspiring creatively to, be able to work all day and work with people and serve food and meet interesting people. And also, trying to give myself the space on the side to create, which is difficult with two jobs, but if it's something you want to prioritize, if you want to prioritize creating in your life, then you'll make the space for it. And that's really what I've been trying to do is make sure that I make space for myself, give myself some gratitude to create art. And if I'm not creating every day, that's okay, but as long as you give yourself the space at some point, something will come out of it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Just to give you all like a background, unfortunately, Evan and I had done a previous interview, but for whatever reasons, we had some complications, so we had to do another one, which is this one, right? But one of the things that we discussed in our previous conversation, and hopefully we'll touch more in depth about it, was just making the best out of our current process and talking about that process, whether it's positive or negative. So I really look forward to getting deeper into that conversation. And I'd love to know, a little bit more of your childhood. Was college something that was put onto you, or when did you know that you wanted to pursue college?
I think college was always not an expectation, but a likely next step for me. Everybody growing up on Long Island, especially, I would say that most people end up going to college, and not that that's a bad thing. It's a great thing that where I grew up, everyone is kind of invested in this higher education. I definitely knew that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I got to college, and through high school, I was involved musically, but also hadn't thought of music as a career exactly. And going into Geneseo undeclared, but knowing that Geneseo had this really great music program, it was part of the reason that I ended up there was for that hope that maybe I could end up in that place.
Where did you find yourself creating this sort of interest in music or passion for it? Was that something that happened in college, or was it high school? Like, when did you think you started seeing like music is something that I'm interested in?
I think starting from middle school and high school with, Hewlett having a great music program and really pushing students to be involved musically, specifically through the musicals that we put on every year. Going into high school, I was convinced that I would, just do stage crew and just be a part of supporting the art that way. And then I was kind of placed in the ninth grade musical, just like without auditioning. The director was like, "Oh, you should do this, and if you want to, even though you didn't come to auditions, you're welcome to audition." And that push really just got me in the ensemble for the first musical. And after that, by the next year, I had a lead role in Sound of Music. So it's, sometimes people need that push and they need that support to feel validated to be musical or artistic.
Absolutely. What was it like during your senior year of high school when you were looking for colleges? Was that something that was challenging? Did you know that you wanted to move away for college? Because for those of you listening, SUNY Geneseo is upstate, so it's like around 6 to 7 hours, especially if you live in Long Island. So, how was that process like for you?
I think it was challenging in that it seemed like a lot of people in high school knew what they wanted to do. And I kind of went on this limb of, okay, I'll look at the SUNY schools, the state of New York schools, and I'll kind of find one that fits. There was really no point in going to a private school when there wasn't a specific program that I was looking for. I think what I did look for is a liberal arts program, which I think is really valuable for high schoolers who don't know what they want to do, that they go to a liberal arts school where they have this opportunity to take general education classes, and they can find these different programs that are often more creatively based than at private schools.
Since you are from Long Island and you went away to upstate New York, how was that transition for you?
It was really interesting. I loved getting to meet people from around New York mostly, but also outside of New York. Truthfully, still the population of most of the SUNY schools is very Long Island based. So, I got to meet new people from Long Island too, which is really cool for rides home and whatnot. But also getting to meet people from the Rochester area. A lot of students come from Rochester at Geneseo, and really just getting to meet people that are different from your high school friends. In high school, it's definitely a small bubble, And then you get to college and it's still definitely a bubble, but it expands itself a little bit, and you get to meet people who are studying things that you would never have any interest in, and you get put in general education classes with people whose majors are super different from yours. And I think it's really beneficial to have classes with, all these different people. I made a lot of friends at Geneseo from just like one-off classes. Like we would be in a earth science class together and would bond over neither of us being science majors, but being a communications major and a music major, or an anthropology major. All these majors in one place that are required to take these general education classes can actually be really beneficial. And also, even the music department at Geneseo not being a conservatory is something that I found really beneficial in my music education at Geneseo. The conservatory setting is really beneficial for those who are just really intense about music and really want that sustained focus. But I think that environment can become this really confining bubble of talented people who are jumping on top of each other. Whereas Geneseo's music program is really fortunate to have people in the classes who just are interested in taking a music class. And I had music classes with people that were not very musically inclined, but were very interested. And the musicals at Geneseo are not confined to just musical theater majors. I was able to almost be in a musical pre-COVID in Geneseo as well, and I know a lot of non-music majors at Geneseo who love being a part of the shows because it's a great creative outlet for them. And it really keeps the program passionate when it's not just the people who want to major in it that are accepted into classes and programs.
Overall, how would you say being in college those 4 years helped you grow creatively as an artist and also just you as Evan?
The college environment was my favorite part of college. Just being there and getting to experience college with all these people who are also experiencing it is really interesting to me, and it's something I still reflect on so much when I'm writing now post college, even my second year out of college. It's just a really unique place to build community and support people. And a lot of these SUNY colleges are based in small towns where if you took away the college, there would not be a crazy amount going on in the town. And I think that's really inspiring for all these young people to have this space away from their parents and guardians to explore life and explore themselves.
I agree with you. I absolutely love the community that was built between the actual town residents and the college students, and that support that we were giving to each other. That was so beautiful. Whether it was like the markets that were open on the weekdays and just being able to talk to them, like people, right? Like people were always so interested in what you were doing, and it was just a very, very welcoming space. At least from my experience, like I genuinely felt connected to the community, and I felt like Geneseo is just a very special place, if that makes sense. Like the people are very welcoming and friendly, and you kind of stick with the routine, and it feels really delightful to be in that space. And yeah, I mean, even on campus, like because it's kind of like a small, medium size, you would see people constantly, and it just was filled with familiar faces, and I really enjoyed that. It was helpful. The access to resources were always available to you, and that's something that is hard as you're living life right now in a college setting, but just figuring things out. You kind of have to create your own little community, your own bubble, and also put in that energy and make sure that it's reciprocated, because the older you get, it can be easier to isolate yourself and kind of do things on your own. But truly, when you're going through a challenge, that is more than ever, you need that community.
Sure.
Did you find yourself struggling with that transition after graduating college and not having a group of people constantly surrounding you and just encouraging you in your process?
As much as we've talked about how college is this really great cultural bubble, there's also a lot of it where you can catch yourself in that bubble in bad situations and kind of struggle to escape. Just like high school drama, where it's you're with these people so often, and that's such a small bubble. And college is still like that in a lot of ways. And the culture of college can be really daunting when issues come up and administration, and there's plenty of things for in this community to go wrong in a college as much as there is great. So I think getting out of college and putting yourself out in the real world is it's really important to recognize that there's more than what's just going on in your college town. Because when you're in college, a lot of times, at least in my experience, I found myself so wrapped up in what was happening in small town Geneseo that I almost forgot that there's a million other colleges with a million other people going to graduate the same year as me, going into the workforce. And it's a different beast. It's no longer a bubble, which is scary, but really exciting, because I think it opens up a lot of opportunities that can be confined in college if you don't connect with them.
You did mention this earlier in our conversation about, you had kind of like a gap year where you were doing things that fulfilled you, and it was just a break from the academic culture, figuring out what you enjoy doing and doing things that you're passionate about. How was that like for you in terms of figuring out what were your next steps and what you wanted to do with your career? Since I believe when we spoke too, you mentioned that like there was a point where you thought maybe you would be like a music teacher. So what was going through your head when you were kind of, I guess, reflecting about career, and what were your next steps during this gap year?
So when I was at Geneseo, I was also on the music education track that the music department has, which now has become a minor, but when I was going through it was just some additional classes that you take: special education, conducting classes, 3 subsets of instruments to prepare you for going into a grad program for music ed. And I love teaching. I definitely love teaching. I have a passion for it. And it was definitely a hard choice, but I think there was a crossroads where I decided that if I wanted to thrive creatively, I needed to put that academic portion aside, which I don't think everyone needs to do. I don't think that, because there's lots of really cool teachers who are in bands and writing music. And I would love to be in a classroom and teach songwriting classes and teach kids how to be passionate about, their own creativity through music. But for me, I could see myself getting into that and no longer making space for myself. And there was just a point where I was so excited about going to grad school, but I also knew that if I did that, I was putting myself on this path that I could always get back to. I'm in New York City now, and there's a million schools. If I want to apply for the fall, I could have a degree in 2 years, and that would be amazing and so exciting and make my family so proud of me. But also realizing that what I truly wanted to do, in my honesty with myself, is give myself space to create, which is such a dumb move compared to going to get a degree and have a stable job as a teacher. But it's also what I was, what I was feeling that I needed to do for myself. And people love to make choices to please other people instead of being honest with themselves about what they want, and trying to work on that.
That is real. That is very real, because as I was listening to you too, like in our path, in our journey, what we once expected for ourselves might change, and that is terrifying in itself. Like, for example, when I started college, I knew that I wanted to be a journalist, and I had no idea if taking communication classes were actually going to make me fall in love with that field or be like, no, I need to switch to a different major. Thankfully, it felt right. I really enjoyed my experience with being a communication student and wanting to do journalism. But now that I've graduated, and it's been really hard, when I apply to jobs and things like that, especially depending on the news company that you're applying for, or what they require is someone with a lot of experience. So I've kind of had to just settle, I guess you could say, not settle, but like have different options. I think in my head I had this one view. It needs to be this news company or in this area, and that is it. And I think I've had to be more flexible because these are the options available to me, and I'm just looking for experience. But because I'm applying to different positions, I've just noticed that like having this expectation of what I want as a journalist, or what I wanted to do, makes the process harder for me. So I've kind of felt like I've had to let go of the pressures that I was putting into myself and like what I wanted to pursue. And now I'm just like, I'm just open to learn. Like that's something that I just want to put into myself, because it takes off so much pressure that I was putting on myself of like, it has to be this path or anything like that. I'm like, I don't know. I genuinely am curious about a lot of things. Yes, I love journalism. From the little bit that I got to taste in college, I just realized like this is so amazing and I'd love to get more experience. But I'm also okay if things go a different direction. But you could always still create something within that field of journalism, like whether it's doing a documentary, like maybe down the road I will learn how to do film or something and then try to do my own documentaries. Like that's the thing that I've been trying to tell myself that makes things a little more exciting, is just being open to change, and also realizing that we are so lucky that our generation is really flexible and really creative. So the platforms and the opportunities are also there are more of it. So it's not just like, okay, me depending and relying on one company or one path. But that's something that's been really interesting for me, is like having to let go of, I guess not my dream, but like this idea that I had for myself of what I needed to do in order to succeed. I feel like I've become more flexible, and it truly has just helped me not feel so overwhelmed by it. Do you feel like you've also encountered that as well?
Well, I was going to say, when you're talking about applying for jobs post college, like for when I was hearing you talk about your experience, it's these jobs that you're going to find in the creative space, they're not going to be exactly what you're looking for, I think, almost ever. You know, if you're looking to apply for news jobs, you're going to find something that fits, and you might find your passion for it, but if you're really following creatively what you want to be doing, it needs to come from you, not from a job that you're hired to. As amazing as that is to work for the music industry and work for these industries, they're not, you need to, even if you get those jobs, you need to be able to be flexible enough to make your space in them still. Um, yeah, but I mean, it's great if you find a wonderful news job, but I think from talking to you a bunch, we've kind of talked about, you know, that like self passion too, that won't come from this magical job that you get hired to write for, compose for, dance for. It's still self expression, and it's a lot different than people who have a dream job in a medical field, or, you know, in a science field of this is the top tier, being a surgeon, this is the top tier. And I don't know if you get asked this question a lot of like, if you could be anywhere, like you could have any job, what would it be? And to me, I always react internally with, well, I don't really think it's like a job that I could like show you the application for, that I could apply for, because there's no one path. I can't go on Indeed and look up how to, you know, how to be a singer-songwriter, composer. And same for in communications. You can take an amazing news job, but if you're not creating what you want to create, then that's not your dream job.
That's so true. It's definitely more of a feeling and just the experiences that you're gaining through life. It's not just like one specific moment
Yeah.
or a title or label. Which again, I think like the more time that passes, the more I feel like I've been forced by just right now, like life, the fact that things are not, I guess you could say like stable or as solid, but it's also good because it has allowed me to think. And just like I said, I think especially in college, I think I was more stubborn. And I think, like I said, I wanted things my way, and there's just one way of looking at things. And I think now I'm more open to anything. And I'm not putting like this pressure, which just feels good because I'm like, I'm just figuring things out as I go and being kind to myself and still doing something creative, whether it's a conversation through a podcast or something like that. And it really has helped me be more patient with this time. Because, I'm young and I'm still figuring things out. But, yeah, so after your gap year, you mentioned that you also live in New York City. So, how has that move been like for you, and what do you think you're going to be doing now?
I really love New York City so far. I think it's the myths that you hear about how inspiring it is and the kind of creative spark here. I think it's really true. I grew up on Long Island, so it's not like I'm so unfamiliar with the city. So moving here to me is almost like moving home, just with more traffic.